do. And I'm going to try and focus on what they do that's different, what they do that might be different to perhaps what you've heard before. And I'm going to take a lot of what I talk about today from our own experience working with care companies. I'm going to reference a study that we did earlier on this year where we looked at outstanding care managers, and I'll reference some of the points from that as well. And also, for anybody that's not familiar, I also host a podcast called The Road to Outstanding, which is available on iTunes and other places online, where I interview great care leaders, not necessarily outstanding care leaders, but certainly great care leaders who are doing things that are innovative, who are doing things that are different, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. Everything that I talk about is going to include a strategy. So I'm going to cover 4 main points today. I'm going to try and give you real life examples of what's been done in actual care companies, whether that's a home or another care company. And what I'm also going to try and do is give you a strategy that you can actually go away and implement. And that's always really important to me whenever I speak at an event, that I give you something that you can go away and put into practice. Now, one thing is that while I'll talk about the strategies, you'll have to come and see me afterwards to give me your details in order for me to send it to you. I wasn't aware whether you would receive them automatically or not, but apparently not. So feel free to get in touch with me afterwards. And the final thing that I'll say is that if you want to take any photos of the screen, if you want to tweet or anything like that, please go ahead. These are all our details, and obviously I'll go through them all at the end as well. So, is everybody ready to get started? I need to find my little clicker. So, let's start. Now, this one might sound really obvious. This is my first sort of real thing that outstanding and great care leaders do, and they build a culture around their business. Now, I know that this is a bit of a buzzword, and a few things that I talk about today will be buzzwords, but I'll try and kind of break them down and get into them for you. So, culture, in my opinion, is what you feel when you walk through the door. So imagine that you're walking through the door of your company now, and I know some of you will have homes perhaps, and some of you are domiciliary. I know I've spoken to lots of domiciliary and care in the home providers today. But when you walk into your environment, what is the culture that you feel when you walk through that door? Now, really what we want and what we want to be avoiding is obviously that blame culture that we hear so much. It's always in the press, that blame culture of what went wrong and who's responsible. What we want to be trying to build, and what I see in every single outstanding care company that I walk into, is a culture where there's responsibility, where people are accountable for what they do, where people's voices are heard, and really, culture is underpinned by the values of the company. So, what are values? What are your values? Does everybody know what the values of their company are? And let's see nods. I will ask for hands and nods and things like that, by the way, so feel free to get involved and interact. So, does anyone have any of these values in their organisation? Any hands? Anybody got? If you can read them, can everybody read them? Dignity, knowledge, caring, excellence. And actually, values in care companies from one company to the other can often be the same. So how do you differentiate them when your competitor down the road has got the same values that you've got? And that can be quite difficult. And I think that sometimes it is very difficult to differentiate values when they're similar to other people. Now, one thing that I would say, and this is really the acid test, is if you walk into your home or your company and you grab a member of staff today and ask them, what are our values? Do you think that every member of your team would be able to answer those for you? I'm seeing shake heads. Any nodding heads? Does anyone think, yeah, okay, fantastic. But it's very difficult because quite often the values are what's written on the wall, they're printed on the website, and then that's it really. And if they're not lived and breathed by everyone within the organisation, then quite often they can get lost. And they do just become words and they fade into the wallpaper. So the questions to ask yourself around values really is, who owns them? Now, when I talk about ownership, and a lot of people will challenge me on this and say, do you know what, we're part of a group, or our values have been set, we have no choice in this matter, these are our values and everybody has to get on board with it. But actually, if you can generate responsibility and ownership from the people who are on the front line, your support staff, your care workers, then it's a very good practice to try and get them to take ownership of the values that you have on the wall. So even if you can't change them, even if they're set in stone, developing something where you can get them to take ownership can have a really good effect. What does it mean to embody them? So let's take a really obvious one, caring. Who's got caring as one of their company values? Hands? Loads of hands. What does caring mean? Because caring could mean something different in one company than it does in another. So actually, if you can encourage your staff to take your values and actually talk about what does it mean to embody the value of caring? What does that look like? How does that mean that you operate within the home? And if you can drive that from day one, with your new staff coming in, with your existing staff, and everybody knows in this home or in this place, this is what caring means. This is how it means that we are with each other, how it means we are with the residents or the clients. Do you interview around your values? Now, this is a really interesting one because obviously values-based recruitment, values-based interviewing, we're hearing about it all the time. Skills for Care are talking about it. How do you interview for the values of the company? Well, I'm going to give you a few examples in a second, but it's one thing to think about, and it's another way of differentiating yourself against your competition. If you can talk about the values in the interview and what it means to have those values, you're going to get a really clear picture from that person as to whether they're on board or perhaps not. Is there a visual stimulus? So I'm seeing a nodding head here, I'm going to have to talk to you at the end. Is there a visual stimulus? So are your values, are they just words? Are they on your website? Are they written somewhere on a wall? Or is there more to it than that? And I'm going to, again, go through a little example in a second. And obviously, what do they look like? What does it look like for somebody to be living and breathing those values within your company? So, let's have a look at an example. Now, I've taken these examples from outside of the care industry, and I think that that's something that doesn't happen a lot. I mean, how often do you go out and look at what the corporate world's doing, or look at what other businesses are doing, not care companies, to have a look at what ideas you can basically pinch? So this is a company called Focus. They're based in Australia. They went pretty viral with these values, and I'm sorry if it's a bit small for people at the back. And what Focus did was they took their values, which are sort of little statements, clever company, no muppets, and then they added a visual stimulus to go along with it, so a picture that actually shows what that looks like, and then almost like a code of conduct, or you could call it a mission statement, you could call it whatever you want, and that explains actually what that value means. So that value means we're awesome people with a great attitude, unleashed and empowered to do our job. So that's made that value really, really clear. Don't know if anyone spotted the one down on the right hand side. Quite amusing, possibly not appropriate for a care company, but it certainly gives you an idea of what it's going to be like to work there, how they operate, what their codes of conduct is, and what they expect from everyone coming through the door. And I think it's a really great example. If you get a chance to look them up, you can go and have a look at these. There's been tons of sort of viral stuff about these guys. Another example is Deloitte. Now, Deloitte are a huge global company. Obviously, they've got all the budget in the world to push their values. And you might think of them as quite a corporate kind of entity without much personality to them. Now, what Deloitte did, and I'm not going to suggest that you do this because I know we don't all have the budget to do this, but Deloitte created an interactive video game. And when people were going for a job, they were asked to play the video game. And it gave them different questions that they had to answer. And then that answer referenced what their values were. So, for example, we asked for help. So what they did was they gave the person watching the video a scenario where they got the paper jammed in the photocopier, and it was kind of shows you the little video of someone having a panic, and then it says, what would you do? And it gave you 3 options, and obviously one of them was ask for help. And if you press the other option, it shows all sorts of like disasters happening. And then that really, really emphasised that these are the values of our company. We want you to ask for help if you're not sure about something. And I think that if anybody wants to go and have a look at that video game and play it, it's a great example of how they embody and embed their values from that interview point right into the business. But you could always do this on your own level. So you could take the values of your company and you could say to your team, or you're going to have a staff meeting, and you could say, let's play a game. Let's take these values and let's create a little game where we give people options, or we get people to go and stand over there if it's this answer, or over there this answer. And you could really get quite creative. And you know that in a week's time, your support worker is going to remember that game and remember what that value was. So I think it's a really interesting way of kind of embedding those values into the company. So, as a little strategy, it just so happens that next Thursday is something called World Values Day. It's being held by the World Values Organisation. They've got a UK alliance as well. And on their website, and like I said, if you want to grab me at the end, I'll be able to send you all the details for this. They are promoting a 1-hour workshop on the 19th of October, so I think it's a great time to get involved with this, to kickstart the process of understanding and getting that empowerment and getting that ownership of your company values. So it's literally 1 hour. You don't have to do it on that day, but obviously it would be a great thing to promote that you're doing. And all you need to do is sign up to it. They'll send you an email. It's got a great video that explains, okay, so what are your company values? This is what the challenge is. This is what we're asking you to do. And really, it's about getting your staff to talk, to discuss, to get that ownership of their values and what it means to embody them. So I think if you can get on board with that, there's an absolute ton of promotion happening with this on things like Twitter and Facebook. So actually you could jump on board with that and promote that that's what you're doing with your staff as well. So I think it's a great thing for you to get some publicity for your business. So World Values Day, great way to start kicking off your values. So I'm going to move on to the next thing that, in my experience, all good care leaders work towards: having a company where the staff are engaged and the staff are empowered. It's got a little fist there. And I'm going to break this down into 2 little separate categories of engagement and empowerment. And it might seem really obvious why you'd want to engage your staff, why you'd want to empower your staff. So I'm going to come to 2 different examples on that. What I would say, empowerment's an interesting one, because would you want to empower every single member of your staff? Or are there certain members of staff that maybe you wouldn't want to empower them, they actually need a slightly more direct approach? We're going to come on to that. So first thing I want to tell you is a story about sausages. So I met with an outstanding care manager a few weeks ago, and she'd moved from an outstanding care company and she'd moved into another company where she'd basically been sent into firefights, you know, to turn that home around. It was a care home, residential care home. And she'd come from a place where they were obviously outstanding. They had an outstanding culture. All the staff were valued. She said to me, her words were, you can feel it when you walk through the door. She'd moved to this new company. And I said to her, how's it all going? And she said, do you know what? I am stuck in this office. And every single day, I have to sign things off, like how many sausages the chef wants to order for breakfast. She said, and to be honest with you, Sophie, I don't even know if he's ordering the right amount of sausages. I don't have a clue. But the policy in this business is that that chef is not empowered to make that decision for himself. It has to be signed off by me. She said, and the fact that I can't, because it's being told from above, the fact that I can't just say to the chef, this is your budget, come to me if you have any questions, I'm here to support you, but get on with it because that's your job, was causing her a big problem, because she said not being able to empower certain members of staff to do what they know how to do meant that she couldn't do what she wanted to do. And what she wanted to do was walk around the home, engage with the staff, engage with the residents, have everyone feel comfortable that they can talk to her. She said the fact that I'm stuck in this office signing off things like sausages is causing me a big problem. And I think it's something worth thinking about. I know a lot of people are kind of bound, especially if you work for a company where you have management above you, that are sort of not letting you do what you want to do. And I think it's a big lesson in empowerment there. But moving on to engagement and why you'd want to engage your teams. Now, I think this probably everybody sat here thinking, well, it's pretty obvious why you'd want to have engaged team. But here's some data behind that. So, a DTI study found that a highly engaged team was 78% more likely to promote the business and generate referrals. Now, promoting the business is your staff just being real enthusiastic when they're out and about. It's about them sharing things on Facebook and being proud of the company that they work for. It's about them generating referrals from things like friends and family that want to then come and work for this company where their friend works and they're having an amazing time, and you know, they work for this really, really fantastic company where they're all being valued. Meet customer satisfaction levels. So that could be your residents, could be your clients, it could be CQC, it could be the council. So actually, to have a team that's really, really engaged is going to do the world of good for you, generating more staff, generating more clients. So it's really, really important. Low teams, only 13%, 13 to 20% likely to, so there's a huge gap there. And it does show how important it is to have staff that are engaged and empowered. So how do you engage staff? Does this sound really obvious? On Friday, an episode of the podcast is going to come out on Friday morning, and the manager that I spoke to in that call said to me, communication, communication, communication. And it sounds, yeah, okay, we can all try and achieve that, but what does that actually mean? So, an open culture. Management crashing through that board to floor barrier, that sort of corporate lingo that you hear, and having people's honesty respected. If somebody comes to you and they've seen something or they've heard something or they have an issue with something, it's about taking that, potentially taking it on the chin if it hurts, you know, but if somebody is thinking that and if they're feeling that, then that is true for them. So as leaders, as managers, you need to be able to take that on board, whatever it is that they have to say, because if you don't, then that person's not going to feel like they're valued. Feedback, both positive and negative. And one thing that an outstanding care manager said to me recently was, the most important thing for me when I went into a home that was in crisis, there were people leaving, they'd had a huge scandal, it had made national news. She said the most important thing for me was to walk through that home day in, day out, and have the staff feel like they could come and talk to me. I didn't want to be seen as the CEO or, you know, the boss. She said I had to make sure that people could come and talk to me about anything that they wanted to talk about. And what she said, one of the most important things that she did and still does, is when somebody comes and tells her something, so let's say somebody reports something that they're not comfortable with, she said the most important thing that she did was close that loop. So someone comes and tells you something, you go away and do something about it, but if that original person's not been told what's happened, in their eyes, you've done nothing. I mean, how many times do you hear that? How many times have you said that about somewhere that you've worked? I told them this, they didn't do anything about it. She said the most important thing was to close that loop and come back to these people and report back to them and say, we've taken on board, we've done this, we've done X, Y, Z, and that loop's been closed, and that person feels like they've gone away and they've actually gained something by reporting or feeding back whatever they wanted to feed back. So I think that's a really interesting one, and I do think it's missed in a lot of places that I go to. So, a little strategy for this. Now, some of you might recognise what this is, the skill wheel matrix. Has anybody seen this before? before. I know it's probably a bit small on some of the screens. So this is something that we actually teach in our leadership academy that we run. We run all sorts of different lengths, from anything from like half-day to 5-day leadership academies. And what I'll do if you want this afterwards is I've put this together almost like a little mini workshop that you can have for free, and you can go back and do it in your own home or company. Now this is about finding out who the right people in your team are to empower and who not to empower. Because let's face it, if you do empower somebody that is low skilled and low willed, they're probably not going to get the job done. It's going to have a bad sort of conclusion, and then you're not going to want to empower anyone else again. So this is an exercise that you can go back and do in your company, where you take people, it might be your immediate team, it might be the whole company, depending obviously on the size, and you can start to plot them out. It's quite a good thing to do if you have an immediate management team, to sit down and do this as well, like maybe take your support workers or a particular team and say, right, Mary, is she highly willed? Is she highly skilled? Then we're going to want to plot her somewhere up here. And this is somebody that needs to be empowered, because if you think about it, if you're really, really capable and you are really motivated, and yet all you have is somebody directing you, do this, do this, do this, how long is that going to take for Mary to actually feel not very motivated? And she's going to feel a bit patronised, to be honest. And Mary is probably one of your best workers, but she's probably the one that's about to leave. So by discovering this and going through this little workshop, it can help you understand who the team members are that you need to empower. You really need to sort of drive them forward and let them get on with it, and who it is that needs a slightly more direct approach. And that's not to say that somebody down here can't eventually get up here, but it's a very interesting little workshop to go away and do and have a look at with your teams. So if anybody wants that, just come and grab me at the end. I'm happy to send it across to you. Now the next thing that I see with great care leaders, and they don't have to be very, very experienced great care leaders, they can be quite young, quite new to the job, is that they have an ability to implement situational leadership. So one thing I will ask is, who is a leader here? Can I see any hands? Who classes themselves as a leader? Okay, not everyone. So we have a philosophy in our company and with every company that we work with, that everyone is a leader. We call it self-leadership, and really, you are the leader of yourself if no one else. You know, you're the one that gets up in the morning and gets yourself to work. So we really, really promote self-leadership with every company that we work for. And what we find is that a lot of the time you have to develop that mindset, because let's say that you've got young team members who you've promoted up to, let's say, team leader or a management position. They might not actually be in the mindset of being a leader because they're still down there with their friends. And maybe they've been promoted because they've got the experience, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they think like a leader yet. One of the biggest struggles that we see, and we did some research on outstanding care managers, and we've looked at kind of all sorts of different care leaders really. With young or newly promoted care leaders, the biggest thing that they struggle with is confidence and self-esteem. So it's something that actually is difficult to invest in. I know that we're all sort of constrained by our budgets and things like that, but if you can start to get your leaders thinking about their own mindset, developing them, then they're going to turn into your great future leaders. So it's about getting them in that mindset that they deserve to be there, that they have achieved and they can achieve, and that moving forward they can go on to achieve even further. Now we got some buzzwords around this, so you might have maybe seen books in W.H. Smith's about grit, because grit seems to be a real big topic at the moment, resilience, and all of these we just bundle it all in and we just call it self-leadership. And what we find is that a situational leader, or a leader that's able to sort of really control their self-leadership, is somebody that's able to flex their style when it's needed. So it's about knowing when the right time is to tell, the right time to empower, and being able to deliver that message with passion, which quite often when you're sort of newly promoted and you've just stepped into those shoes and suddenly you have to manage, let's say, your friends, it can go one of two ways. People can either become very much like, you know, the young dictator, and they start to say, do it like this, because they don't know how to lead because they've not had that experience. Or they can almost become too affiliative with their team because they're not comfortable stepping into those shoes. So therefore they're very much like, oh, don't worry, I'll do it. How many people have experienced that when you've been promoted and you feel like you can't tell people what to do, so you're almost like, oh, I'll do it. There we go, 2 hands up there. So really it's about understanding how to move people, and it's about understanding that it's okay to change your style. People say to me all the time, that's manipulative. If you act like this with this person, this with this person, that's manipulative. No, it's not. That's leadership, and that is about being able to move people and get them to go where you want them to go. One thing that's also important to know is that actually it's not about you when you're the manager, when you're the leader. It's about the mission and the task that you're on. It's about being able to take it on the chin, it's about being able to be resilient, and it's about being able to focus on what the mission at hand is, rather than being sensitive and taking it all personally. So we have a few different communication styles, and this is something that we teach on our leadership course, and this is actually something that I think has the biggest impact on team leaders and new managers. And so, I'm sorry, because I always say young managers, I don't mean young, I just mean fresh managers. How many people have worked for somebody who has this style of leadership? We call it commanding style. This is my way or the highway. And did it work? I mean, it will work, it can work, but actually, if you only ever employ one style of leadership with your team, you will only ever engage with 20% of your audience. 20% of your audience will say, they're telling me what to do, I accept it, I'm going to do it. But actually, the other 80% are going to go, this person does not get me. They don't understand what it takes to get me to do my job. We've got an affiliate, and now actually there's more styles than this, but just for the purpose of this exercise, I've just put 3 up here. The affiliative leader, we are all in this together. It's about us. We're on this journey. I'm one of you. I'm in there with you. How many people have worked for somebody like that? And actually, sometimes what you want to say to them is, shouldn't you be, being the boss and not being kind of like our friend all the time? And that's the challenge, and that is something that happens a lot as well. And then we have the Martin Luther King leader over here. I have a dream. And this is the visionary leader, the person that kind of is always painting that picture of what's at the end of the rainbow. And that can be very, very powerful. But it's about using it at the right time. Normally when you're in crisis, normally when you've got maybe a CQC inspection on the horizon, and you've got to really, really get your team all together, and you've got to get them looking up at that vision of what you want to achieve. But the key thing about this is, what is the best way as a leader to communicate your message to your team? And it's not always the same one of these. It's going to change. It's going to need flex. So we have a challenge, another strategy. And as I said, I thought you'd automatically get sent these, but you don't, so you'll have to come and grab me if you want to get a copy of this, where we use a communication styles questionnaire. Very, very simple, and what it does is you go through it, and you can do this yourself, you can do it with your teams, and you can actually see what style you are using the most. And that's fine. If that is the style that you're using and that is the style that's needed, then that's absolutely fine. But actually what it allows you to do is have some really big reflections as to, should I be changing my style in certain scenarios? Should I be changing my style with certain people? And I have to say that some team leaders that I've worked with have said that this is the biggest thing that they have taken on board and adapted and put into place. And so many of them have said to me, I was always really affiliative. I was always trying to be in there and be everyone's friend still, because I almost felt a bit uncomfortable that I'd been taken to that next level. But to be able to adapt and flex your style means that you will get your message so much further. So, I don't even know what time it started though, we're good for time. The last thing that I'm going to cover is selection. So, without a doubt, every great leader that I meet in care has a selection process that is clear, that is concise, that's consistent, and what I want to talk to you about is how to create it. So, does your current selection process, and when I say I also mean within the organisation as well, because let's face it, you're always selecting people to move up the ladder, you're always talent spotting for your next leaders, and does your current process allow you to spot risk, and does it allow you to spot potential? The reason why I say both is because quite a lot of the time, businesses are always focused on who the risk is, who the person is that they're going to have to fire, or who the person is that they hired, and then 3 weeks down the line they think, oh my gosh, who was that person that I interviewed? But also, are you able to spot potential within your own staff? Because you might have some real gems in there that are staying quite quiet at the moment, might not be that confident, but they could be your next superstars. Do you have anything in place to spot these people at the moment, either as they come through the door, or while they're already in your company, keeping a little bit quiet? So, most selection processes, this is what most companies do. So they'll take a look back, so they'll have a look at CVs, they'll look at CRB checks, references, might use an agency, hopefully not. And then what this doesn't allow for, because all of these conditions are actually controlled, and when I say down here about things that are easily hidden at interview, I mean that there are also things that can easily be displayed at interview. So I mentioned the person that you hire and then 3 weeks later you wonder who they were. They were probably displaying a great deal of compassion, a great deal of caring, a great deal of knowledge in that interview. But actually, 3 weeks later, you found out that that's not them and they've only turned up to work sort of 3 times in the last week. And all of those things can be hidden. And I think one of the key things is, how many times do you hire someone you shouldn't have hired? And how many times do you miss someone that you should have hired? And if you think about that, I think that you can put things into place to make a real difference. So, getting your selection process in check. This is what great care leaders do. They do not allow for poor interviewing. They do not allow for people to be missed. They standardise their interview process so that every single hiring manager is on the same page. They're asking the right questions, they're delving into people to the right depth, and they are really, really able to tease out of people at interview where that risk is and where that superstar potential is. Interviewing for the values of the company, and I know this is probably something a lot of people are getting into at the moment, trying to establish from day one, from that first interview, and embed those values into that new hire. Now, once you've gone away and done that values workshop, I think that you're going to be a lot clearer on what it means to embody the values, and you're going to be able to start implementing that. Onboarding. Does anybody have an onboarding process in place, or kind of like a procedure in place for onboarding? By onboarding, I don't mean orientation, I don't mean here's your first day, here's where the fire exits are. I mean properly taking that person from the point of hire to the point where they've passed their probation in a very clear step-by-step process. Now, we actually have a 1 email boot camp on this, so if you want that, it's got about 5 different strategies. I know I keep saying strategies, it's got 5 different things that you can implement that will change your onboarding process. Because how many people do you lose from hire to probation? It's probably normally sort of like maybe 3 months, 6 months, might be a little bit longer. So if you think about how many people you hire during that process, what I find with great care companies is that they ensure that they have done everything in their power to get that person through probation and given them the best possible chance to succeed. So, spotting potential for progression. How many times do you have someone in their first couple of weeks that you sit them down and you really understand that this person could go places in your business and they could be a future leader? And actually, how much time do you spend with them to say, this is where you could go in this company. You see Sharon, she did it. She started as a support worker, she's achieved this, and actually painted that pathway for that new hire, because that's what's going to make somebody stay. That's what's going to make somebody not leave and go down the road for a job somewhere else, because they know that you can spot that potential in them. And how often do you develop staff according to their needs? Because I get phone calls all the time from companies that say to me, we want some team cohesion, we need our team bonded. And actually, when we actually go and have a look at the team and look at where their issues are, quite often it's not team cohesion, they all get on great. But it's about things like confidence, it's about things like self-esteem, it's about being resilient. So being able to spend the time understanding what the needs are of the individual, so that you can feed that back to them in their appraisals, and also of the team, so that you can deliver training that's actually targeted and not just based on your perceived idea of what they need, that can be very, very powerful. So the strategy alongside this, obviously I've mentioned the onboarding bootcamp. It's literally about 5 different steps that you can do to put a proper policy and procedure in place to really, really help people, give them that chance in the beginning. And also, I've not really talked about the Judgement Index assessment itself, but we are used primarily at the point of interview. It's an online assessment, and it's used to uncover values-based behaviour of the person sat in front of you, so that you're not sat there thinking that that person is a fantastic interviewee. You're able to actually see what the risks are and ask them the right questions according to that. We would like to offer everybody, obviously, the onboarding guides, but also a free sample of the Judgement Index assessment if you want it brought to life for yourself, to really understand how great care companies are supporting that selection process. So, just making sure I've not missed anything. If you want any of that information, obviously just come and grab me, but also our stand, and this is obviously what I'm going to give you, the information about the values workshop, the information on the skill wheel matrix on who to empower within your team, the situational leadership, which is the communication styles questionnaire that can help you to understand what style of leadership you're doing and whether you need to be bending and flexing that style to suit the audience, and also the onboarding guide and a free sample of the Judgement Index assessment. And we are at stand B44, which is literally in a straight line down that end, right outside the Care Forum. So if you don't catch me now and you want to have a chat later, we are here all day, and I'll be straight down there at B44.